The first thing Evan Cole noticed when he opened his eyes was the color of the light. It wasn't the sharp white of Earth's hospitals or the yellow glow of ship lights. It was blue, soft, pulsing, alive. It moved across the walls like waves. For a long moment, he didn't move, just lay there, breathing the strange air that smelled like flowers and metal. His head ached. The last thing he remembered was the alarms on his shuttle screaming and the sound of tearing metal. He'd been heading back from a mining repair job near the asteroid field when the storm hit. Then nothing. Now he was here, wherever here was. He pushed himself up, wincing. The floor was smooth like glass, but warm to the touch. The walls were covered in symbols that glowed faintly. His tools were gone. His helmet was gone. He was wearing a soft gray suit that wasn't his own. Someone had changed his clothes. That realization made him freeze. Then he heard the voices. They were soft, melodic, and echoed strangely. He turned toward the sound and saw them, figures made of light and glass, tall and elegant, walking with slow grace. Their skin shimmered like crystals in the sun, and their eyes glowed faintly with silver fire. They were beautiful in a way that didn't seem possible, almost like living art. One of them noticed him and spoke in a language that sounded like singing. A small device on the wall blinked and translated in a gentle tone, "The prize has awakened." Evan blinked. The what? The aliens murmured to each other, watching him with fascination. One of them stepped closer, holding a round crystal that floated between her hands. She scanned him from head to toe, nodding in satisfaction. "He is intact," the translator said. "Bring him to the Hall of Selection." Before he could ask questions, 2 more aliens approached, motioning for him to follow. They didn't touch him, but their presence made it clear that refusal wasn't an option. Evan's pulse quickened as they guided him through corridors that glowed with pale blue veins of light. Every surface seemed alive, breathing softly like it had a heartbeat of its own. He passed windows that opened to an alien city beneath a giant dome. Floating towers drifted in slow motion. Bridges made of energy connected them like threads of light. Strange flying machines glided between them silently. It was the most beautiful thing Evan had ever seen, and yet it terrified him. They entered a massive hall filled with hundreds of aliens. The air shimmered with light and sound. The walls curved high above like the inside of a cathedral. At the center stood a raised platform where one figure waited. She was smaller than the rest, her armor decorated with glowing silver runes. Her eyes were bright violet, her hair a cascade of glass-like strands that shimmered like frost. When she saw him, she smiled. It wasn't an unfriendly smile, it was curious, gentle even, but it made his stomach twist. The crowd hushed. The translator clicked. A voice spoke softly. "The human prize has been presented." Evan stared around in disbelief. "Prize? What's going on here?" The aliens didn't answer him. They bowed toward the girl on the platform. The translator caught only fragments of her words. Selection. Rare species. Human male. Compatible. Then she raised her hand, pointing directly at him. The translator struggled for a moment, then finally produced a clear phrase. "I claim him as mine." The hall erupted in cheers, melodic, echoing, overwhelming. Evan felt heat rise in his face. This had to be some kind of mistake. He wasn't a soldier or an ambassador or anyone important. He was just a maintenance engineer from a backwater colony. 2 attendants stepped forward and guided him away. Their touch was gentle, almost respectful, but firm. As they led him down another glowing corridor, he tried to ask questions. "Where am I? Who are you people? What does she mean, claim me?" The attendants didn't respond. The translator attached to the wall remained silent. They brought him to a smaller chamber, his quarters apparently. A wide window showed the alien city from above, glowing beneath the dome like a living star. The room had no doors in the usual sense. It sealed itself with light. Everything shimmered faintly, as if made from energy rather than matter. On a small table he found a tray of food, strange fruits that glowed faintly, and a clear liquid that smelled like honey and rain. He hesitated, but hunger won. The fruit tasted like cool air and sugar, and the drink calmed the fire in his throat. When he finished, he sat by the window, staring out into the glowing city. His reflection looked small and out of place against the alien light. Somewhere out there, the girl who called him her prize was probably celebrating. He whispered to himself, "This can't be real," but the ache in his muscles and the hum of the city outside told him it was. Hours passed. Evan lay on the soft surface that served as a bed, trying to piece together his thoughts. Every theory he made fell apart. Was he part of some scientific experiment? A misunderstanding? Or something worse? Just as he began to drift into uneasy sleep, the door of light shimmered open. He sat up quickly. The girl from the hall stepped inside. She looked different up close, smaller, almost human in size. Her face was calm, eyes glowing faintly violet. When she spoke, her voice was like soft chimes, and the translator on the wall struggled to keep up. "I am Arani," it said. "You are the one chosen." Evan swallowed hard. "Chosen for what?" She tilted her head. "For union." The translator paused, corrected itself. "For connection. Our people are fading. You are strong." Evan shook his head. "Listen, I think there's been a huge mistake. I'm not who you think I am. I'm an engineer. I fix things, not whatever this is." Arani stepped closer, studying him curiously. "You speak with emotion," she said slowly. "Humans have fire in their voices. It is beautiful." He backed up a little, nervous but trying to stay calm. "I just want to go home. If you can help me contact my people." Her expression softened. "You fell from the sky. Your world is far. We saved you. You live because of me." He blinked. "You saved me?" She nodded. "Yes. The elders said to let you pass into the light. I refused. You breathe because I asked them not to take your soul." He didn't know what that meant exactly, but her tone carried sincerity. Slowly, he sat down again. "So, thank you. But what happens now?" Arani looked out the window, her voice quiet. "Now you must be studied. The council will decide how to keep you. Until then, you belong to me." "Belong?" he repeated. "That's not how humans work." She frowned slightly, as if confused. "It is how the Valari have always survived. The chosen are claimed by the strong. It is honor. You are not harmed. You are kept safe." Evan rubbed his temples. "Yeah, I can tell. Real safe." Her gaze softened again, and she lowered her head slightly, a gesture that seemed like apology. "I will teach you our words," she said after a pause. "Perhaps we will understand each other better soon." With that, she turned and walked back toward the door. Before she left, she looked over her shoulder and said quietly, "Do not fear, Evan of Earth. You are precious now." Then the light sealed behind her, leaving him alone in the quiet hum of the alien city. He lay back down, staring up at the glowing ceiling. The word precious echoed in his mind. It wasn't comforting. It sounded like something kept in a glass case, something owned. Outside, the city pulsed with slow rhythmic light. Ships drifted through the air like fireflies. He thought about Arani's strange eyes, her calm voice, and the way she'd said she'd saved him. She didn't seem cruel, just trapped in her own kind of logic. Maybe she was following orders. Maybe she didn't know what this looked like to him. Evan turned onto his side, whispering to the empty room, "What do you even want from me?" The translator on the wall flickered faintly, as if hearing him, but said nothing. Somewhere in the distance, a low chime echoed through the city, like the sound of bells underwater. He didn't know it yet, but it was the call of the breeding council, announcing the arrival of their youngest candidate. And somewhere beneath those glowing towers, Arani stood before her elders, holding a sphere of light in her hands, the record of a dying species, and speaking his name in a voice that carried across the halls of power. Evan Cole of Earth had become more than a visitor. He was now part of their fate. He didn't know that soon the entire Valari sector would know his face, and that one girl's decision to save a human from death would change their world forever. Evan woke to the soft hum of the room, the blue light still flowing across the walls. His head ached, but the curiosity gnawed at him more than the pain. He couldn't stop thinking about the girl who called him her prize. Arani. Her voice, soft and strange, echoed in his mind. He sat up, stretching, and noticed a small figure entering the room. It wasn't Arani. This one was older, taller, with sharp, intelligent eyes that glimmered under the ambient light. She wore a simple robe and carried a small tablet that seemed to float beside her. The translator on the wall flickered, and a calm voice said, "Greetings, human. I am Taylor, scholar of the Valari Council. You are awake?" Evan rubbed his eyes. "Yeah, I'm awake." "Where exactly am I?" "You're in the city of Lumeris, central hub of the Valari sector," Taylor explained. "You fell from the sky. Your arrival was unusual. The The council selected you as a genetic match for our youngest candidate, Arani. Evan froze. Genetic match, you mean? I'm supposed to... Taylor held up a hand, stopping him. You are not in immediate danger. You are not a test subject in the harmful sense. Our goal is survival, and your species carries qualities that can help our next generation. That is all I can say for now. Evan swallowed hard. So, I'm some kind of... prize? Taylor hesitated, then nodded. To your eyes, perhaps. To ours, you are vital. Your cooperation is necessary, but not forced. Arani's decision affects how you are treated. Evan shook his head. This is insane. I can't just be... claimed. Taylor studied him with careful interest. You have a strong spirit, human. That is rare. The council expected compliance, but perhaps you can teach Arani something even we cannot. Evan frowned, uncertain what she meant. But before he could ask more, the door shimmered open again. Arani stepped in, her violet eyes wide and hesitant. He speaks? Taylor asked. Yes, Arani said softly. And he questions everything. I like that, Evan's jaw tightened. Wait, you like that? You're calling me your prize, but you like that I don't just roll over? Arani tilted her head, thinking. Humans are different. You resist. You are not like the others we have considered. That makes you interesting. Evan rubbed the back of his neck, trying not to laugh nervously. Interesting isn't exactly comforting, you know. Arani smiled faintly. Perhaps not, but I will not let them harm you. Not while I am here. The sincerity in her voice surprised him. Somehow, despite the strange situation, he felt a spark of trust. She wasn't cruel. She was a child in a dangerous position, and somehow she cared. Over the next few hours, Arani guided Evan through the basics of Valari culture. She spoke carefully, translating her own words into the device Taylor had installed. He learned that the Valari were an ancient species facing a slow decline in numbers. Their strength had once ruled many star systems, but now survival depended on careful planning, alliances, and genetic preservation. Arani explained that her title, breeding candidate, carried honor but also tremendous expectation. I do not choose this, she admitted quietly, her fingers tracing the runes on her arm. The council says I must, but I wish things were different. Evan felt a pang of sympathy. Here was a being revered by an entire civilization, yet trapped by the rules of her own people. I get that, he said softly. Being chosen doesn't mean you're free. Sometimes it just means someone else has plans for you. She studied him closely. Your world, you speak of freedom as if it is sacred. It is, Evan replied. It's not just a word. It's what we fight for, what we live for. Even when it's hard, even when it hurts. Freedom is life. Arani's violet eyes glimmered. Then perhaps you and I are more alike than the council realizes. For the first time since he arrived, Evan felt a strange warmth of hope. Perhaps she wasn't only a figure of command or ceremony. Perhaps she could be an ally, maybe even a friend. Taylor watched them from a distance, her expression unreadable. Do not grow too close too fast, she warned. The council does not tolerate interference even from their youngest candidate. Evan didn't like the warning. He felt the weight of it pressing on him. Every lesson about the Valari, every tale of survival and history carried an unspoken threat. But he also realized he could learn from them, maybe even use that knowledge to protect himself and Arani. Days passed. Evan explored the city under Arani's guidance. Lumeris was unlike anything he had ever seen. Towers of glass and light stretched impossibly high. Roads of energy flowed between them, with vehicles that hovered silently. Creatures of crystalline structure walked the streets. Some were like walking statues, while others shimmered and changed color with emotion. Arani showed him places forbidden to ordinary humans, the council's library, where every book was a floating crystal of data, the gardens where the plants sang in the wind, and the arenas, where young Valari practiced skill, strength, and agility. Evan tried to keep up, though his body ached after every practice. He was not a warrior. He was not built for this, yet every time he failed, Arani encouraged him gently, never mocking. You must learn, she said one evening as they rested on a floating platform overlooking the city. Not for the council, not for me, but for yourself. If we are to survive, we must understand each other. Evan looked at her, the light reflecting in her eyes. I never thought I'd be teaching anyone about humanity, he admitted. You teach more than you know, she replied. Even your anger, your resistance. It is a lesson. One night, Evan discovered something troubling. Hidden among the records in the council's library He found plans, charts, and projections about his arrival. They weren't just studying him, they were planning how his species could be used to secure the Valari's future. While nothing explicitly threatened him physically, the thought made him uneasy. He confronted Arani the next day. "They're planning something," he said. "They're not just honoring me. They're using me as a tool. I don't like it." Arani looked away, her hands clenched. "I know. That is why I did what I could to save you. But my hands are not free either. I cannot defy the council openly. I risk everything just by speaking to you alone." Evan felt the weight of responsibility press on him. "Then we need a plan. I can't just sit here and wait for them to decide my fate." Arani nodded slowly. "Perhaps, together we can find a way, but it will be difficult. The council watches constantly. And the other candidates? They are not your friends." For the first time, Evan understood the true danger he was in. He was no longer just a human lost in an alien world. He was a symbol, a tool, a key to survival. And if he failed, it could cost not only him but Arani as well. Days turned into weeks. Evan adjusted to the rhythm of Lumeris, learning the language, observing the people, and practicing small tasks to prove his usefulness. He repaired machinery, decoded energy patterns, and even helped Arani with her studies of human culture. Slowly, they built trust. Arani began to ask him questions about Earth, about its people, its history, and its flaws. Evan told her stories of human ingenuity, courage, and sometimes foolishness. She listened intently, laughing softly at some of the more ridiculous tales. For the first time, she seemed less like a symbol and more like a person, a child of her world yearning for freedom. One evening, while they watched the glowing towers shimmer in the distance, Arani spoke quietly. "You do not fear me," Evan shrugged. "I do, in a way, but not you. You're just like me, trying to survive in a world that doesn't understand us. The fear is for the people who want to control us." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "You are brave, human. Perhaps braver than even I am." Evan felt a warmth he had not expected. In a world full of alien beauty and strange rules, in a city where he was both honored and trapped, he had found something unexpected, an ally, someone who understood the meaning of courage and survival. But deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The council would not be idle forever. Rival factions would question the selection. And the younger candidates, seeing him as a threat to their own standing, would begin to move. Evan also understood that his bond with Arani was both a shield and a risk. The council might see his influence as dangerous, and any misstep could have dire consequences. He had to be careful, patient, and clever, and so in the soft glow of the alien city, Evan made a quiet promise to himself. He would survive. He would protect Arani, and he would find a way to return home, or at least ensure that when the council's final decision came, he would not be a helpless pawn. Above them, the stars shone through the glass dome, distant and cold but full of possibilities. Somewhere out there, his old world waited. But for now, he was here in Lumeris, learning the rules of an alien society, and discovering that survival was not just about strength, it was about trust, courage, and the spark of hope that refused to die. Arani watched him silently, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the human she called her prize could be more than a symbol. He could be a friend, an equal, someone who might change the fate of her world, and perhaps even his own. And as the city pulsed gently beneath the twin moons, Evan understood that nothing in his life would ever be the same again. Evan awoke before dawn, the pale blue light of Lumeris flowing softly across the walls of his quarters. The city outside was quiet, but he knew the calm was only temporary. He could feel it in the tension that hovered over every street, every tower, every council chamber. Something was coming. He didn't know what yet, but he felt it like an instinct. Arani arrived quietly, moving through the door without a sound. She looked different in the early light. The violet in her eyes softened, almost human. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Evan ran a hand through his hair. "Ready for what?" "The challenge," she replied. The translator caught her words, but they felt heavier than any simple translation could carry. Some rivals do not accept the selection. The council allows a contest of honor to prove worthiness. You must participate. If you fail, the council may give you to another candidate. Evan's stomach dropped. "You're joking," Arani shook her head. "I am not. I cannot win this for you. Only your actions can prove that you are worthy. He swallowed hard. He was not a soldier. He was not trained in Valari combat, or even in their tests of skill. He had survived by fixing machines and surviving accidents, not by strength or cunning. And now he was supposed to face an entire culture's trial, judged by strangers who had already decided that humans were not strong enough. Yet, when he looked at her, he felt something he hadn't felt since arriving. Determination. Arani's gaze did not plead or command. It asked him to try, to resist, to show that he was more than just a tool. The arena was enormous, circular, and open to the sky. Towers of glowing crystal surrounded it, filled with spectators. The air vibrated with excitement and the low hum of energy barriers that marked the boundaries. Arani led him to the center. A platform lifted them slightly and the crowd hushed. A tall figure stepped forward. The translator called him Lord Kalen, a senior member of the council and one of the challengers of the selection. His crystalline armor shimmered with pale gold and his eyes burned with intensity. "Human," he said, voice ringing across the arena. "You are not one of us. You are weak. You are foreign. You must prove your worth to remain with candidate Arani. Fail and you will be replaced." Evan's mouth went dry. The words hit like ice. He wanted to protest, to yell, to argue that this was wrong, but the silence of the crowd forced him to listen. One mistake here, one slip, and it wouldn't just be embarrassment. It could mean losing Arani's trust or worse. The first test was intellectual. A massive machine appeared in the center of the platform. It was broken, a jumble of energy circuits and moving parts that glowed with faint blue light. Lord Kalen explained the rules. "This device represents the balance of life. Restore its flow and prove that you understand harmony between species. Fail and your claim is void." Evan stepped forward cautiously. He had studied machines all his life, but this was unlike anything he had seen. Its components seemed to react to his movements, shifting and changing with every touch. The crowd murmured. Arani watched silently, her hands clenched. He began examining the device, recalling every engineering principle he knew. He traced circuits, tested energy flows, and slowly began to understand its rhythm. He realized that it wasn't just mechanical, it responded to intention. When he carefully aligned the circuits, the energy pulsed in a steady wave. The crowd leaned forward, watching in stunned silence as the machine's glow spread evenly across the platform. Then, with a final adjustment, it came alive, sending light cascading in perfect harmony across the arena. The murmurs rose into gasps. Lord Kalen's eyes narrowed. "This is unexpected," he admitted. "You have skill beyond our expectation." Evan wiped sweat from his brow. "I just do what I can," he said quietly. Arani's violet eyes shone with pride. "You are learning," she whispered. The second test was physical, though not in the way he had feared. A shifting obstacle course appeared. Floating platforms and energy barriers forming and dissolving in unpredictable patterns. Evan had to navigate it while balancing on narrow beams of light, timing jumps perfectly and reacting to sudden shifts. He stumbled at first, nearly falling into a glowing pit. Panic surged through him, but he remembered Arani's words. "Trust yourself." He adjusted his steps, feeling the rhythm of the platforms, moving almost instinctively. Each leap, each careful landing brought him closer to the end. The crowd was silent for the final stretch, watching as a human untrained and foreign outpaced many Valari novices who had trained their whole lives. With a final leap, he landed on the last platform as it solidified beneath his feet. Cheers erupted, echoing across the crystal towers. Evan's chest heaved. His heart pounded, but he had done it. He had passed the first two trials, but Lord Kalen was not finished. "Strength alone does not suffice," he said. "Now comes the test of courage." A narrow bridge of pure energy extended into the void beyond the arena. On the far end, a crystal sphere held a glowing seed, symbol of the Valari's future. He was to retrieve it without falling, without hesitation, and if he failed, the consequences were severe. Evan stared at the gap. It looked impossible. Every instinct screamed to step back, but he remembered Arani standing on the platform, her gaze steady, silent encouragement in her eyes. He clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. The bridge responded to his weight, shifting and pulsing. He moved slowly, careful, feeling each vibration, each tremor. Halfway across, a gust of energy surged, knocking him off balance. His heart leapt into his throat, but he caught himself, adjusting his footing. The crowd held their collective breath. Arani's lips moved silently, murmuring encouragement. Evan felt her presence beside him, though she was still on the platform. Somehow her faith made him stronger. Step by step he reached the sphere. He grasped it carefully, feeling its warmth, its energy. It hummed in response to his touch, recognizing him as more than just a visitor. As he turned to return, the bridge shimmered and threatened to vanish. He paused, focused, and slowly retraced his steps, balancing, listening to the rhythm of the energy. When he reached the platform, the sphere safely in hand, the crowd erupted. Cheers, claps, and melodic voices filled the arena. Even Lord Kalen looked shocked. "Impossible," he muttered. "He has done what no one expected." Evan dropped to his knees, exhausted. Arani ran to him, her crystalline hair shimmering. "You did it," she said softly. "You proved your worth, not just to the council, but to me." He looked at her, panting, sweat mixing with relief. I just wanted to survive this," he admitted. "And maybe not let you down." Arani smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting pride and something warmer, something almost human. "You could never let me down, Evan. Not if you keep your courage. Not if you keep your heart." Lord Kalen stepped forward, hands raised. "The human has passed. The candidate's choice is validated. He is acceptable." The arena erupted in cheers. Some of the young candidates whispered, some glared, but none dared to challenge the decision further. Evan had proven that he was not just a tool or a prize. He was someone capable of understanding, courage, and ingenuity, qualities the Valari had respected above all else. As they left the arena, Arani walked beside him. "You were brilliant," she said. "I knew you could do it, but this is only the beginning." Evan looked at her, sweat and grime on his face, exhaustion heavy in his limbs. "Beginning of what?" Her eyes darkened slightly, shadows crossing her violet gaze. "The council has other expectations. The other candidates are not happy. Some will try to challenge us again, and there are secrets in our world you do not yet know." Evan sighed, feeling the weight of it all. He had survived a contest that could have ended badly. He had proved himself to an alien culture far older and more advanced than his own. And yet he felt that real challenges were only just beginning. Over the following days, Evan continued to learn. He studied Valari technology, the history of their people, and the politics that governed every decision. He observed how the council operated, how alliances shifted, and how even minor actions could ripple across the entire sector. Arani was always by his side. She explained the customs, the hidden rules, and the subtle gestures that could mean the difference between respect and humiliation. Evan listened carefully, learning not just with his mind, but with his instincts, feeling how her guidance made the impossible possible. One evening, as the twin moons of Lumeris reflected off the crystalline towers, Arani turned to him quietly. "You are not just my prize," she said. "You are someone who could change our future, perhaps even save it." Evan looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "I don't know if I'm capable of that," he admitted. "You are," she said softly. "Because you think, because you care, and because you do not give up. That is more than many of us can do." For the first time, Evan felt a strange sense of belonging. He was still an outsider, still a human in an alien world, but he had proven his worth. He had earned a place beside Arani, not as a prize, but as someone she could trust. And yet, even as he felt that small sense of victory, he knew the real test was still ahead. The council would not rest. Rival factions would plot, and somewhere in the shadows, other candidates waited, watching, calculating, ready to strike. Evan understood one thing clearly. Survival in Lumeris was no longer just about skill or courage. It was about trust, loyalty, and the unbreakable connection that was forming between him and... The victory in the arena had changed everything, yet it brought no real peace. Evan felt it immediately. The council's praise was loud and public, but he could see the eyes of the other candidates sharp and suspicious. They whispered, moved in subtle patterns, and exchanged glances filled with jealousy and calculation. Nothing was safe. Nothing was simple. Arani met him in his quarters before sunrise, her violet eyes restless. "They are watching," she said quietly. "Even those who bowed in the arena now plot in shadows. You have proven your worth publicly, but privately. We are still vulnerable." Evan rubbed his temple. "Vulnerable how?" She stepped closer. "The council is not united. Some favor the decision that chose you. Some do not. Some believe you are dangerous, a human, who could disrupt the order of our society. And the other candidates? They will not stop until they see you removed. He felt a chill. He knew this was serious, but he hadn't expected enemies so soon. Then we need to understand their plans. We need to know who is dangerous and how. Arani nodded. There is a chamber beneath the council hall. Few are allowed and only with permission. That is where the secret archives are. I can guide you there, but it will be risky. If we are caught? Her voice trailed off. Evan didn't flinch. He had already faced the impossible in the arena. I'm ready, he said firmly. Night fell, and the city of Lumeris shimmered under the twin moons, a maze of floating towers and lighted bridges. Arani led him through hidden corridors, her movements graceful and silent. Every step seemed calculated, as if she had memorized the shadows themselves. Finally, they reached a door etched with complex runes. Arani pressed her hand to it, and the runes glowed, allowing the barrier to fade. The chamber beyond was vast and circular, lined with shelves of floating crystals. Each crystal contained the history of the Volari, the secrets of their technology, and records of every candidate considered in the sector. Evan's eyes widened. This is incredible. But dangerous, too. Arani moved to a cluster of crystals and lifted one into the air. The light projected a map of the sector, marked with symbols and lines. The council has plans to unify the sector, she explained. But some factions believe humans cannot be trusted. They plotted to replace you before the arena, but I prevented it. Evan studied the map, realizing the complexity of Volari politics. So some of them wanted to kill me? Arani nodded. Not openly. But in secret, yes. They saw your arrival as a threat to their influence. If they had succeeded, you would have disappeared without a trace. Evan clenched his fists. He had survived the arena only to find that enemies were still plotting. But now he had knowledge, and that was power. Then we stop them, he said quietly. We find out who is plotting and make sure they can't act. Arani hesitated, then placed her hand on his arm. You must understand, Evan. The council's power is not easy to challenge. Even with knowledge, we must act carefully. One wrong move and everything could be lost. Evan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had learned one thing clearly. Survival in Lumeris required not only courage but strategy, patience, and careful alliances. Over the next few days, he and Arani worked in secret. They studied the archives, learning about each candidate, their strengths, weaknesses, and allegiances. Evan was amazed by the depth of the Volari's planning. Every decision, every selection, every challenge was calculated to maintain balance in their society. Humans, being unpredictable, were considered both a risk and an asset. One evening, while reviewing data, Evan discovered a plan he hadn't expected. A faction of candidates intended to challenge Arani openly during a public ceremony, to force her to choose a different human, or none at all. The ceremony was only days away. If it happened, Evan could be exposed to danger, and Arani's position would be threatened. We have to act fast, Evan said, urgency in his voice. We can't wait for the ceremony. They'll corner us before we can react. Arani looked worried but resolute. I will help, but you must be ready. This will test everything, your skill, your courage, your ability to think under pressure. The night before the ceremony, Evan prepared. He reviewed every lesson, every observation he had made since arriving. He thought about the arena, the hidden chambers, and the rival candidates. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also a strange confidence. He had survived impossible challenges before. He could survive this. The ceremony began in the central plaza of Lumeris. Crowds gathered, their voices a mixture of excitement and tension. Arani stood on a platform, radiant in her ceremonial attire. Evan approached cautiously, blending in with the Volari attendants, his presence unnoticed by most. Suddenly, the rival faction appeared. They were swift, coordinated, and merciless. Their leader, a tall candidate named Virek, stepped forward, his eyes locked on Evan. Human, he said, his voice amplified by the translator. You do not belong here. Step aside or face the consequences. Evan took a deep breath. He had no weapons, no armor. Only his mind, his agility, and the lessons Arani had taught him. I'm not stepping aside, he said firmly. Not now, not ever, the challenge began. Virek moved first, using a combination of speed and energy pulses to block Evan's path. Evan ducked, rolled, and used the environment to his advantage. Floating platforms, shifting energy barriers, and reflective surfaces became tools in his hands. He was no warrior, but he was clever, and that cleverness kept him ahead. Arani watched from the platform, her hands clenched in silent support. She knew he could do it, just as he had proven himself in the arena. But this was different. This was not a test designed by the Council. This was a real, dangerous confrontation. Step by step, Evan maneuvered through the challenge. He avoided attacks, anticipated movements, and used the environment to confuse his opponent. He remembered the lessons of trust, courage, and observation. Every action was deliberate. Every move mattered. Finally, he reached Virek. The candidate lunged, but Evan sidestepped and used the energy pulse to propel Virek past the platform's edge. Virek caught himself just in time, glaring at him, but the crowd erupted in gasps and applause. Evan had not only survived but had proven his capability under pressure. Arani descended to his side once the challenge ended. "You did it," she said softly. "You faced real danger and survived. You protected yourself and me. You are no longer just a visitor. You are a part of this world now." Evan smiled faintly, exhausted but relieved. "I didn't do it alone. You guided me. Your faith made me stronger." Arani shook her head. "You had the courage all along. I only reminded you of it." The council convened after the ceremony, acknowledging Evan's success and reaffirming Arani's choice. The rival candidates were reprimanded but not destroyed. They would wait, bide their time, and seek opportunities in the future. Evan realized that survival in Lumeris was not about a single victory. It was a continuous challenge, a game of wits, courage, and alliances. In the quiet moments after the ceremony, Evan and Arani walked through the city. The towers glowed softly in the night, and the twin moons reflected in the canals of light that flowed like rivers. Arani looked at him, her eyes serious. "This is only the beginning," she said. "More challenges will come. But I trust you. And perhaps you trust me too," Evan nodded. "I do. I've learned that trust is as important as skill. And I want to protect you, not because I have to, but because I choose to." Arani smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and hope in her expression. "Then together we will face whatever comes next. The council, the factions, the hidden dangers. We will face them as one." Above the city, the stars shimmered like distant promises. Evan understood that he was no longer a stranger, no longer a visitor, and no longer merely a prize. He was part of something larger, a world filled with beauty, danger, and possibility. And as he looked at Arani, standing beside him, he realized that the greatest challenge of all would not be the council, the factions, or even the dangers of the sector. It would be navigating the trust, courage, and connection that bound him to a young candidate who had chosen him, and whose future, and perhaps the future of her people, now depended on him. Evan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility, the spark of hope, and the certainty that no matter what came, he would not fail, not while he stood beside her. For the first time since his arrival, he felt that he was not only surviving, he was thriving. The calm that had followed the ceremony was short-lived. Evan could feel it the moment he awoke. Tension in the city, whispers in the corridors, the subtle hum of energy that seemed to pulse with urgency. Lumeris was alive with anticipation, and not the good kind. Arani appeared at his quarters before dawn, her violet eyes sharp and alert. "They are moving," she said quietly. "The rival faction I warned you about, they have chosen tonight to act. If we are caught unprepared, everything we have fought for could be lost." Evan swallowed, his heart pounding. "Do they have weapons?" Arani shook her head. "Not in your sense. They will use technology, traps, and influence to manipulate events. They aim to discredit me, humiliate you, or worse, remove you from the sector entirely. We cannot let that happen." He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. "Then we face it," he said firmly. Together. Night fell, and the city of Lumeris glittered under the twin moons, the towers casting soft reflections over the canals of light that crisscrossed the streets. Evan and Arani moved carefully, avoiding the main thoroughfares, sticking to hidden corridors and shadowed walkways. They had studied the city for weeks, learning every secret passage, every hidden platform, every observation point. Their destination was the council hall, where the rival faction intended to stage their coup. Arani had learned of their plans from the secret archives. But the timing and methods were unpredictable. Every step was a risk. As they approached the hall, Evan noticed the energy fields that surrounded it. They flickered with irregular patterns, a sign that someone had tampered with the controls. Arani's hand brushed his arm. "Stay close," she whispered. Inside the hall, the scene was tense. The council's regular attendants were present, but shadows moved among them, figures cloaked in dark energy, signaling, positioning, and preparing for action. Evan could feel the danger in the air like static electricity before a storm. One of the rivals, Virek, stepped forward, his crystalline armor glowing faintly. "Candidate Arani," he said, voice amplified by the translator. "You have chosen a human who cannot protect you. The council deserves a choice of strength, not sentiment." Evan stepped beside Arani, feeling the surge of fear and adrenaline in equal measure. He had no weapons, no combat training in Valari martial arts, but he had learned to think, to act, to survive. And he was determined to protect her. Virek moved suddenly, directing energy pulses toward the platform where Arani stood. Evan acted on instinct, using his body to block the energy. Sparks flew and the platform quivered, threatening to collapse. Arani reached for a control panel, stabilizing it with a skill that reminded Evan of how far she had grown in only a few weeks. Together they moved as a team. Evan anticipated Virek's moves, using his agility and observation to dodge attacks and redirect energy where possible. Arani adjusted panels, activated shields, and communicated silently with him through gestures. The combination was unexpected. The rivals had assumed that a human would be useless in such a confrontation. But they had underestimated him, and underestimated the bond between him and Arani. The council members watched in silence, some shocked, some impressed. The chamber vibrated with energy, tension thick in the air. Evan felt a rush of fear, but it was accompanied by clarity. He understood that this was not just a battle of strength. It was a test of strategy, trust, and courage. Suddenly, a massive pulse of energy surged from the ceiling, aimed directly at Arani. Evan threw himself in front of her, feeling the force knock him off balance. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he gritted his teeth, holding her steady. The energy dissipated harmlessly against the shield she had activated, and together, they pushed forward. Arani's eyes met his. "We can do this," she said, voice steady. "Trust me." "I trust you," Evan replied, determination hardening in his chest. The rivals tried to flank them, using secret corridors and hidden mechanisms, but Evan anticipated their paths. He guided Arani through alternate routes, using his knowledge of human logic and improvisation to outmaneuver them. At one point, they used a floating platform over a canal of light, balancing on the edge as the rivals' energy pulses crashed harmlessly behind them. Finally, they reached the central chamber, where the key control systems of the hall were located. Arani moved swiftly to secure the main console, her fingers flying over the controls, restoring order and sealing off access points. Evan stayed at her side, keeping watch, using everything he had learned to predict any movement, any attempt to interfere. Virek appeared one last time, blocking the exit. "You cannot escape this, human," he said. Evan squared his shoulders. "I'm not escaping. I'm stopping you." The final confrontation was tense and precise. Evan used the environment, the energy conduits, and his instincts to create a path for Arani to finish her work. They moved in perfect coordination, a combination of intelligence, courage, and trust. Virek tried to anticipate them, but every move he made was countered by the bond and strategy of the human and the candidate. At last, Arani activated the final sequence, neutralizing the energy surges and locking the rivals out of the system. The chamber hummed with stability once more. The rival faction's plan had failed. They retreated, frustrated and humiliated, leaving the human and the candidate standing together victorious. Evan slumped against a console, exhausted. "That was insane," he said. "I've never faced anything like that." Arani laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You did more than survive, Evan. You saved me and perhaps even the council itself. You are no longer just my prize, you are my partner in this." He looked at her, realizing the truth of her words. Through every challenge, every risk, every trial, he had proven himself not as a tool, not as a trophy, but as someone capable of courage, strategy, and loyalty. The council convened immediately after the incident. Their leaders praised the human for his quick thinking, his bravery, and his ability to protect Arani. Even those who had opposed him could not deny the truth. Evan had earned their respect. not through violence alone, but through courage, intelligence, and an unyielding determination to survive and protect. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Evan and Arani walked through the city, the twin moons reflecting off the towers. The canals glowed softly, and the air was alive with the gentle hum of energy. Arani's hand brushed his, and for a moment the weight of the council, the rivals, and the sector's politics lifted. "You did it," she said quietly. "You survived everything they threw at us. You proved yourself in ways I never imagined." Evan smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mingling. "I didn't do it alone. You guided me, trusted me, and fought beside me. That made the difference." Arani's violet eyes softened. "You were always capable, Evan. I only helped you see it. And now, we are stronger together. No matter what comes next, I believe we can face it." The twin moons rose higher, casting silver light across the city. For the first time, Evan felt truly at home. Not in his old world, not as a visitor, but in this alien land where courage, trust, and connection mattered more than anything else. He realized that he had been given more than survival. He had been given friendship, partnership, and a purpose. He was no longer just a human in an alien world. He was someone who mattered, someone whose actions could shape the future. And as he looked at Arani standing beside him, he knew that together they could face whatever the sector and the universe threw at them. They had survived trials, challenges, and danger. Now they would face the future together, stronger, wiser, and united. Above them, the stars shimmered like distant promises, and for the first time, Evan felt that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The journey had been impossible, dangerous, and unpredictable, but in the end, it had forged something extraordinary. Trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a human and the youngest candidate in the sector. And for Evan, that was victory. More profound than survival, more enduring than any challenge. He had arrived as a stranger, a prize, and an outsider. He would remain as something far greater, a protector, a partner, and a force that even the oldest and most powerful of the sector could not ignore. For the first time, he believed in the impossible and in himself. This completes the 5-part story. Evan's journey goes from being an accidental arrival and a prize to becoming a trusted partner, a protector, and someone who earns his place in the Valari world through courage, intelligence, and loyalty. If you want, I can also compile all 5 parts into a single seamless story for easier reading and formatting, keeping it fully engaging, third person, and simple English. Do you want me to do that? You said, Part 5. 2000 words का लेखो और interesting होना चाहिए, और third person style में लिखनी हाँ, और simple basic English का, और violated free होना चाहिए without short heading. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's a full part 5 of your story. She's the youngest breeding candidate in the sector, and I'm apparently her prize, written in third person, simple English, engaging, fully violation-free, around 2,000 words. Evan woke before the twin moons of Lumeris had fully risen. The city quiet and still beneath the soft glow of crystalline towers. For a moment he allowed himself to believe that the danger had passed, that the council and the rival candidates had finally accepted him. But the instinct he had developed during his weeks on Lumeris,